Hey, we're live. That went faster than I thought. Hey, folks.
Hey.
To the Banff podcast. This is Saturday night. We do Savage Banff. We talk about the fast, furious, fun world of Savage Worlds. Here with us today is Mr. Travis Legge from, I want to make sure I get your company name right. This is Aegis Press, Aegis Studios.
Aegis Studios, yep. Thank you.
All right, cool. I need you to indulge me, sir. I have to play our little multimedia introduction. I apologize, but my probation officer, his kid does this music thing, so I got to hang on, just take a second. Well, little introduction assures you, gentle listener, gentle viewer, that says a high-quality podcast, only the finest production values, the most ethically sourced farm-to-table geeky conversation for your podcast listening pleasure. And we're here to talk to Travis today about Scarred Lands for Savage Worlds. Right off the top, check out his Kickstarter, tinyurl.com/scarredlands, SCARRED lands. This is an old setting. It's been around. Currently, Onyx Path owns it, and you're licensed to do it for Savage Worlds. And the Kickstarter is just you're like over 200% funded, like right now. It looks like.
Yep, I think last we looked it was 292%, which is good. We're a little under $200 away from unlocking our next stretch goal.
What is the next stretch goal?
That'll be a T-shirt that'll go out with art from the book. It'll go out to the backers first at a discounted price, and then probably be available for people to purchase normally afterward at a not discounted price.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the next one, and then after that we have our next stretch goal will be at 8,000. That unlocks a Blood Sea source book, which is one of the very cool geographic areas in the Scarred Lands. There's a lot of different places. The setting derives its name from the fact that the world is literally scarred because of a Titanomachy, a war between the gods and the Titans. And the Blood Sea is a location where an ocean has been turned red with the blood of a Titan, because that Titan still to this day lies chained on the sea floor with their heart ripped out, bleeding out into the ocean. So it's turned it into the Blood Sea.
That is pretty cool. All right, and we are inches away from that, as you said, like $200. So
something like that.
All right. So this is a T-shirt that's unlocked. You're going to make it, and backers. It's provided at low cost to all backers. So you guys are being smart, and you're planning into thinking about shipping costs and that kind of stuff. So that's cool. And 8,000 is the Blood Sea, and then I'm assuming once we hit 8,000. We'll think of some new stretch goals at that point.
Generally, what I do is I'll announce a stretch goal every time we unlock a stretch goal. So there's always kind of 2 unlocked stretch goals on the campaign.
Always 2 there are. Okay.
So, that's the plan. That's the rhythm. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, and the last thing I would want to do is disappoint the fans if they're looking at 3 stretch goals ahead. Like, oh, I really want this thing, but we're never going to get there. I prefer to keep everything within the grounds of being, something that appears attainable with where we're at financially at that point. So that way nobody's, bummed out.
That seems very reasonable. Yeah.
I can keep all my sadness about unreached stretch goals to myself.
That is wise. Well, hey, let's talk about Scarred Lands. It has a deep history and a huge existing fan base. What drew you personally to want to bring it into Savage Worlds?
Well, I've been a fan of Scarred Lands since day one. I picked up the Creature Collection way back in the day when it came out, and I just loved it. I actually worked on a setting using the OGL that we drew from a lot of those stat blocks, a lot of those systems that were introduced in Creature Collection. In my first role-playing game, we used open game material from that. So it's kind of like, as long as I've had a career, I've been working with Scarred Lands in a sense. But I started developing stuff for the 5th edition version of Scarred Lands about 6 or 7 years ago now. and working with Onyx Path. I love the setting very much, and I've been doing some extensive work with Savage Worlds, off and on for several years. Contagion, that first game I talked about, we've done a Savage Worlds version of. My game Citizens Divided is in Savage Worlds. When we did our second edition of Odysseys and Overlords, we brought that over to Savage Worlds, and it's just kind of been my home, I guess, for fantasy gaming in terms of my own publications. So was talking with Rich Thomas, who owns Onyx Path, and just explaining kind of like how I felt that there was a market for it in the Savage Worlds. I felt that the setting would work very well with the system. And he said, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." And we worked up a licensing agreement, and so the rest is history being made. So yeah, I think that there are several items in the setting that I think are really well represented with the systems and the system approaches that Savage Worlds uses. So I'm very excited to bring those to the table.
Okay, cool. You mentioned Onyx Path a little bit. How'd that partnership come to be, and what kind of creative freedom have you had under that license?
Good question. So I've been working with Onyx Path as a freelancer now for about 7 years. And so through my time there, I went from just kind of being a freelance writer to now I'm the social media manager. I run the Twitch channel. I also do just a lot of video production for them. So I'm kind of like a long-term freelancer with Onyx Path. So being able to build that relationship over time, I've always kind of had like an idea in the back of my head of like, how can my company work with their company? And we were always sort of looking for opportunities to do that. But when this came up, it just made sense, because I have the ACES license too, so that made it easier. But yeah, I mean, I've been working with them for quite some time. I really had just a wonderful relationship with them. I've gotten to work on a lot of properties that I loved, even as like early on in my gaming life. Like World of Darkness stuff, things like that. I got to do development stuff for Mage the Ascension 20th Anniversary Edition, which was kind of a lifelong goal. So that's how the relationship built out. And then getting into working on Scarred Lands, it made sense.
Yeah, I was just talking with somebody about old school World of Darkness just earlier today. We never played that game. We had a lot of affection for Werewolf.
Okay. Yeah. I got to do a little bit of work on Werewolf as well.
When I was searching for you, I don't want to get off subject.
Sure.
Going to a little bit, forgive me, but your name keeps coming up with Pugmire when I did a search on you. Can you tell me what that's about?
Yeah, I've worked on Realms of Pugmire quite a bit. So Pugmire is a game that was created by Eddie Webb. It's owned by Eddie through his company Pugsteady, and then Onyx Path licenses the publication of it. And Pugmire is the X meets Y pitch is it's dogs in D&D effectively. You're playing anthropomorphic dogs, and you're in a fantasy like setting. It's very much a fantasy setting in terms of how the characters interact with it. But if you zoom out and look at it from a meta level, there's clearly sci-fi elements involved, which is fun. And it's designed where it works for all ages. You can certainly sit your kids down to play it and have a good time, but you can also go very adult and very dark with the world. So it's been a huge deal of fun to work on. I got to work on the first edition of that. Pretty much everything after the core rulebook came out, I got a chance to work on in some level or another. And then with the new edition, I've had the opportunity to work on a couple of things. I got to work on the Jumpstart for Curious Cats of Mao, which is the Cat Nations expansion. And I got to work on Threats and Curs, which is kind of their monster collection or their monster manual. And then I've gotten to work on Pugmire Unleashed, which is the player's guide for the new edition. Many of those are currently available for pre-order on Backer Kit. Realms of Pugmire, the core book, is out now for the second edition, as is Threats and Curs. And I think Curious Cats is going to be out fairly soon. Onyx Path doesn't generally do release dates, but I'm fairly certain that it's coming along the queue nicely, so it shouldn't be too long before that's out.
All right, cool. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to mention that because I was always very fond of that setting. So I'm sorry your name associated with that. I just wanted to mention it.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And I love Pugmire. I can talk about Pugmire literally all night. I think it's a wonderful setting. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it to those of you watching or listening at home.
Well, hey, I'm about to activate my podcast host magic and do an awkward segue. So
Sure.
You had mentioned that Pugmire can handle both, lighthearted, pulpy fantasy and darker stuff, which brings us to Savage Worlds and Scarred Lands, because Savage Worlds are kind of known for fast-paced, pulpy action. Scarred Lands has kind of a grittier, might even say edgier feeling. So could talk a little bit about how we sort of fit one into the other.
Sure. So a couple ways. I think that the fast, furious, fun systems of Savage Worlds do lend themselves well to the action of Scarred Lands. The idea that you're playing these heroes that are a bit larger than life. You are definitely exceptional in a world that is deadly dangerous for everyone. The heroes need to be able to rise above a little bit. And even for the Savage World system, because the world is so harsh, we do have a lot of widgets that the characters get when they start. Ancestries are set to a 4-point, some as opposed to a 2-point. We have culture packages that get added on as well. So there's a lot. You get a little bit of extra oomph when you're starting out, which is nice because some of the creatures are very, very scary, very, very deadly. But I think that creates a very cool sort of tension when you're playing. One of the setting rules we have as well is basically kind of gives explicit permission to take any of the average monsters and put a wild card in the group. So even if you're facing, the anything from, the Blood Reapers, which are these giant mantis-like monstrous creatures in the Hornsaw Forest that are just murder machines, all the way down to just a handful of goblins. You never quite know, is there going to be a wild card in this group? How is this going to land? And I really wanted to make that hang a lantern on that because the world is so dangerous. But a lot of the other setting rules allow us to get some cool tweaks that bring in important, I guess, flavor elements of the setting.
Mm-hmm.
Give you an example. A theme that you keep coming back to with Scarred Lands is so much of what's happening is a direct result of this war between the gods and the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Divine War happened, the first Titan to fall was Mazos, the sire of sorcery. And his body was literally just ripped to pieces by the gods. And when that happened, his essence sort of blanketed the world. So the bits of his body are being kept apart, and they're always sort of trying to pull themselves together. And this creates sort of a mystical blanket around the world. So if you're accessing magic through certain arcane skills, you trigger what's called Mazos' Bane. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like a minor backlash that happens, an elemental energy that releases because you're casting magic. And so normally this just is a mild inconvenience. It's a flash of heat or maybe a flash of light. This might make it harder for your character to hide if you're casting a spell because you literally glow when you cast. But then if you have a critical failure, of course, this energy gets so out of hand that it gives you and everybody in your immediate vicinity fatigue. Things along those lines. So being able to apply those widgets really help sell the flavor of Scarred Lands, I think, in a way that, in my opinion, even supersedes the way it was handled in, the OGL systems. Okay. Because Savage Worlds is a little bit freer. It's not quite so rigid. So we get to sort of massage how those things go down a little bit more acutely, which I think is good for the setting.
Okay. I had two questions about Savage Scarred Lands concepts and Savage Worlds, and you just answered them on your own, sir. So get out of my head. You're jumping ahead, sir. You're jumping ahead.
My apologies.
No, it's fine. Well, I'll tell you what. So we're talking about magic. So how are you handling divine and Titan spawn magic within the Swade framework? Are there any new powers that you're particularly proud of?
So yeah, there's a bunch of new stuff that we're working on. So there's really three kinds of spirituality, I guess you might say, in the
Mhm.
Scarlands. You have divine worship, which is you worship the gods or the demigods. You have Titan
Mhm.
worship, which is you worship the Titans, and then you have what's called the Ushidani, and the Ushidani uh, worship spirits of nature, spirits of ancestors, spirits of animals, spirits of objects. And so all of these have their own unique ways of interacting with the magic system. Most Ushidani just have a Yushada bond. Basically, they pick a patron spirit and they bond with that spirit, and that gives them some level of extra ability. They get kind of a base boost that's always active. They have the ability to spend a penny to channel that bond, which gives them kind of a cooler short-term power. And then they have a hindrance that's brought on because of it. It works almost like a ban, right? Like, it's something that they promise to do or promise not to do because of the spirit that they've bonded with.
Okay.
And
Cool.
then you've got effectively you have clerics, which worship the gods, and then druids, which worship the titans. There's a little bit of place where that gets muddy because one of the titans, one of the people on the god side of the divine war was a titan. So she is her followers are still considered druids, but they're not automatically considered titan spawn like other druids are. So, which is another sort of delineation. It's a setting rule. There are creatures that can be designated as Titan spawn if you worship the Titans or draw power from the Titans, or even get enough Titanic corruption on you. So you might be even like a worshiper of the gods who falls in the blood sea, drinks a mouthful of tainted water, and now you are considered Titan spawn. And that triggers certain abilities, makes you considered unholy and things like that. So it's something you got to be a little bit mindful for. You want to make sure you don't get polluted by a Titanic ichor.
There's a joke about going to Jersey and swimming on the beach at low tide, but I'm too mature to go for that kind of low hanging fruit. But no, that's cool stuff. Let me ask you a question about the Kickstarter. It mentions over 35 new ancestors. Could you give us a sneak peek of one or two that you thought really stood out, or was particularly fun to work on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm spoiled for choice here. There are a lot of very cool ones. My favorite ancestry, probably in all of Scarred Lands, is the Hollow Legionnaire, and we did put up a preview of them, I believe, on one of our public updates earlier this week on the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
The Hollow Legionnaires are created. So to give you a little bit of lore, I'll try to get through this as quick as I can because it can get a little in the weeds. But during the Divine War, there were a group of warriors who served Corian, the god of justice and righteousness and awesomeness. Mm-hmm. And these warriors were so faithful that Corian took their souls out of their bodies and put them in suits of plate mail armor that were effectively magic proof. And these became his Hollow Knights.
I think we have some art up there on the being shared right now. One of them.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So the Hollow Knights went out and they served Corian, and they served him well. They were some of the greatest warriors in the Divine War. Corian had promised that he would reward them for their service, but while they were out being awesome, Vangel, the god of destruction, grew jealous at the skill with which these Hollow Knights were fighting. So he went and maimed their bodies, basically desecrated them so Corian could not resurrect them. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the Divine War, Corian went, "Oh crap, I'm sorry. I promised you something and I can't really deliver. But I'll give you this little land called the Gleaming Valley. It's this nice pristine area that didn't get screwed up in the Divine War. And if there's anything else I can give you, let me know." And they tried to form a society for a couple of decades, and they were really having a hard time. And they came to Corian and said, "We miss being able to procreate. We want to expand. We want families." Mm-hmm. And so Corian was like, "Got you." And you created these metal spires that stand in the Gleaming Valley. And each one pulls a different type of soul to it. And those souls are then bound into armor. and they rise as the Hollow Legionnaires. So as a Hollow Legionnaire is born, there's somebody who has died. They were heroic, or they have unfinished business. They're brought through this process. They match the personality to the spire, and they rise as a new being that has some of the memories of their previous life. And they have innate knowledge of like language and like how the world kind of functions a little bit, but they are, also somewhat confused. So they'll often get relationships with this group called siblingers, who are people of other ancestries who live in the Gleaming Valley, and basically try to act as, big sibling, big brother, big sister type thing, to help the Hollow Legionnaires find their feet. So the Hollow Legionnaires are basically suits of armor that are haunted. They have a ghost bound into them. And though their ghostly form is solid, it's also like translucent. So like, and slightly luminescent. So they're not very good at hiding in the dark because they glow. And you can actually see through them a little bit where their skin is exposed. But they're my fun little favorites. I really enjoy them quite a bit. And then another, just off the top of my head, another ancestry that we're introducing in here that we haven't really gotten to dive too deep into in quite some time in the Scarred Lands, just because of additioning and whatnot, are the Turali, which are these leopard folk that live in the continent of Termana. And they sort of, they're in this one area called the Gamelgan, just that is like a pristine jungle that kind of got locked off from the rest of the continent by one of the Titans way early in the Divine War to try to keep it from getting messed up. So the only way to really get to it is to sail around the continent to come to their shore. So the Turali have been living kind of in isolation. They're not. They have unique perspectives on the world and on the Divine War and how the gods and the Titans interact, because they haven't really been exposed to a lot of it. So I think they're a lot of fun to experiment with as well. And I also like cat people, so you got that going for you.
That's cool. Let's talk about elevator pitches.
Sure.
We've been doing fantasy gaming for a few years in Savage Worlds. There's the Fantasy Companion that's going on. Pathfinder. The Pathfinder setting recently got converted to Savage Worlds. If you were trying to sell a group on the Scarred Lands, what is the elevator pitch? Why do I pick Scarred Lands as opposed to picking Glorantha or doing a homebrew setting with the Fantasy Companion?
So what I would say is Scarred Lands gives you a rich, beautiful environment that's been being developed for a quarter of a century, where you have this war that's happened in living memory. It's entirely possible, if you're playing like a long-lived ancestry, like an elf, that you might have stood shoulder to shoulder with a god during the Divine War. If you're playing like a human, you might have a piece of equipment that you inherited from your parents or grandparents that was used during the Divine War, maybe even blessed by one of the gods. And the environment itself is just dripping with effects of this war that serve as plot hooks, also serve as like environmental dangers. The entire place is just altered so much by this. And one of the things that we're even including in this player's guide is there will be environments based on the Titans whose remains are accessible. Like you can go and adventure inside those remains or in areas that are affected by those remains. Right. So the world itself is literally poisoned by these presences. There's entire regions. There's a place called the Festering Fields where so much necromantic energy got left there during the Divine War that undead just sort of randomly pop up. There's storms where undead just kind of blow through, literally carried on the wind. It's a very evocative setting, I suppose.
It's kind of a cool idea. It reminds me of the red zones in France that have been kind of off limits since World War I. I don't know if you ever heard about those, but
no, I haven't. What are those?
When they were first, using chemical weapons in the trenches in World War I. There are certain areas, certain battlefields where there was just so much used that even today, 2025, they don't want people going in there. So there's certain,
yeah. That sounds about like it. Yeah, there's all sorts of places. I could sit here all night telling you about them. There's one place called the name escapes me. There's a mountain range. Fangstooth is the name of the element that comes out of it. But the glutton Garak, one of the Titans, had his teeth ripped out and thrown basically over the shoulder of the god who did it, and they landed and turned into a mountain range. Fangs Fall Mountains. Okay. I don't know why I forgot that, but that's another entire setting that you can adventure in. That's just made out of bits of a Titan. So.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So yeah, I've heard the setting described as divine fallout, and I'm starting to understand why.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, very much so. You are living in a post-apocalyptic setting, a world that has been beat to tar by this war between incomprehensible beings, and each continent is sort of touched in a different way. There are multiple continents, and they all sort of have different effects from that war.
Okay. Well, let me. You're a guy who's obviously, you spent a lot of time with the setting. I'm sure you've run a bunch of, adventures in the Scarred Lands through play testing or, just play. What tone do you, as a game master, aim for when you're in the Scarred Lands?
It kind of depends. I mean, my baseline for running Scarred Lands games is Grimbright, I guess would be the way I would put it. Like, the world is busted and it's in bad shape and things are not good, but there's hope, and that hope falls on your heroes.
Okay.
So it's struggling against a very corrupted, very beat up world, sometimes with people on it that aren't great. There are a lot of good villains in the setting, I'll put it that way. And so, to my mind, I would almost, if you're a fan of like the TV show Angel, it's almost that perspective, but in a fantasy world, right? Like, the world is busted and broken, and we got to just keep fighting, because fighting the good fight's all we can do, and that's kind of the vibe of it. But there are opportunities for you to make a real difference. There are opportunities for you to heal damaged parts of the land. There are opportunities for you to prevent titanic creatures from being resurrected or reawakened. There are opportunities for you to, serve the gods in a way that might actually change, the place that you're from. So that's one of the cool things about it, is that you have that opportunity to like really affect the setting.
That is pretty cool. Hey, we're getting close on time, but I wanted to mention you've been doing releases, it looks like, throughout the year on Drive-Thru RPG for Scars Land content.
Yes, yeah, I think we released our first thing in January. We've been doing the creature profiles, which every month we release a new creature. Scarred Land started out with creature collection, so I thought it was appropriate to start out with creature profiles. And these are low cost. You can grab them, drop them right into your game. You don't even necessarily need to have them in, Scarred Lands. If you're just running a fantasy companion with your own setting, grab one of these creatures and take it for a spin, take it for a test drive. They are available as an add-on on the Kickstarter, and we also have the Creature Profiles Plus add-on, so that you can get one where it's just everything that's been published up to now. There's 10 of them out. We have a second add-on you can get that's a little bit more expensive, but it acts as a subscription, because there will be a new one coming out monthly now through the end of 2026. Okay. So you kind of get yourself set up to have these automatic, every month, get a new monster in your inbox. So that's one of the cool add-ons that we have. We also... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to praise your art. I was sharing your Lion Manticore guy earlier, and this is some kind of a four-armed spider warrior. But
the Narleth, they're pretty cool. The art was done by Handiwork Games. They published the 5th edition creature collection, so all the art originally appeared in the 5e creature collection, and because Onyx Path has been very generous to us in the licensing agreement, we have access to all of the previously published art materials. I have the whole library, which is awesome.
That is very nice. Feel the scintillating rays of my jealousy, sir. That's very cool.
It's very cool. Yeah, I could. Yeah, the art. John Hodgson did a lot of it, but I know he's got a team at Handiwork that also works with him. But it's just beautiful stuff. Yeah, I'm really
cool. Well, hey, just to button things up, tinyurl.com/Scardlands. You can go right now. You have 13 days left. Today is the 1st of November, and we're running for 13 more days. Knocking down stretch goals like they're bowling pins. We're coming up. Oh, we're 150. $150 right now from the next stretch goal of 6,000. So
not too bad.
This is a really good time to get on board the bandwagon. There's a lot of cool stuff that's getting unlocked, and you got 2 more weeks. So jump on now, folks. Travis, nice talking to you, sir. Any closing thoughts?
Likewise. Just thank you very much for having me on. It was a pleasure. Again, if you're hearing this and you haven't yet done so, please consider checking out the Kickstarter. If you want to get a taste of the setting, we do have the Spiragos trilogy, which is a series of 3 adventures up on Drive-Thru RPG. The first one, Gauntlet of Spiragos, has ready-made characters in it, has guidelines for advancement of those characters, taking them up through the first 5 advances. And it's also got their ancestries, culture packages, all the setting rules, everything's in there. So you can grab that and really do a intense test drive of the setting. And I think it's somewhere around $7, I think, in PDF.
Yeah, $7.95 for the PDF. Sharing it right now.
So I would
again, a cool cover.
Thank you. Yeah, that was Rich Thomas did the art for that one, and it's beautiful stuff. But
you can find this on Drive-Thru RPG under Aegis Studios. That's the Gauntlets of Spiragos, and there are 3 other adventures. 3 adventures total.
3 adventures total, yeah. And between those adventures, not only you're getting all the stories and stuff, but there's, I think, something like 140 monsters and NPCs in there. Mm-hmm. So I mean, you're getting a whole creature collection's worth of monsters too. So it's a very robust trilogy. And if you if you know you want to get in on it, they're available as add-ons on the Kickstarter as well. So.
Sweet. That's probably a little better price on the Kickstarter the way it usually
is.
Yeah,
you save a few bucks on the Kickstarter for sure.
All right. Well, hey, folks, thanks for tuning in to Savage Banff. Hopefully we will see you in a couple of weeks. And Travis, once again, sir, thanks for talking to us.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right. And we'll catch you all next time.